you know, maybe not now, but what about if I do this?
If you're a fan of classic American comedies, then chances are you remember the unforgettable Don Knotts.
You drop that rock and you get over here!
He was the lovable, bumbling Deputy Sheriff Barney Fife on the iconic 1960s sitcom, The Andy Griffith Show.
Behind every iconic laugh is a story you've never heard. Don Knotts, the beloved face of classic television comedy, brought generations to tears with laughter. But what if behind those wide-eyed expressions and quirky antics was a man quietly battling demons, no script ever revealed? In this video, we uncover an emotional truth shared not by tabloids but by the person who knew him best, his daughter. It's a journey through laughter, loss, and legacy, where comedy meets vulnerability. Stay with us as we peel back the curtain on the man who made the world laugh, while silently fighting to stay afloat. The shadow before the spotlight is a childhood forged in fear of Don Knotts. To understand the laughter and the regret that defined Karen Knotts' final moments with her father, we must first step back, far away from the sterile hospital room, to where it all began, a childhood where laughter was a rare commodity and fear was an ever-present shadow. Before the spotlight, before the Emmys, before the immortal character of Barney Fife, there was Jesse Donald Knotts, a boy born under a dark star in Morgantown, West Virginia. He wasn't just dreaming of escaping poverty. He was dreaming of escaping the chilling presence of the man who once held a knife to his throat, his own father. The Knotts household was a battlefield. William Jesse Knotts, a once proud farmer, was being consumed by the twin demons of schizophrenia and alcoholism. The family farm was lost just a month before dawn. The youngest of four and an unexpected arrival to a 40-year-old mother entered the world.
There was even a time Don was threatened by a knife his father was brandishing. As a child, he was often pale and remained thin, which later became part of his iconic look as an adult. But as a child, this was a great source of strain for Don, and he was often ill. He would even bear the brunt from his brothers.
The air in their home was thick with tension. William's unraveling mind often erupted into violence. Young Don recalled the sheer terror of facing his father's unpredictable rage, the cold metal glinting in his hand. How does a child survive such an environment? For Don, the answer lay within. He built a fortress within his own imagination, a world safer and infinitely funnier than the one he inhabited. His primary companion in this world was Danny, a ventriloquist's dummy. Danny wasn't just a toy, he was a confidant, a partner, the first audience for the nascent comedian. His older brothers, almost a generation apart, offered little solace. They, too, wrestled with the family's legacy of heavy drinking and often turned their frustrations on their younger sibling. Yet, Don idolized them, especially Sid, who possessed a natural comedic spark, a flicker of light in the overwhelming darkness. But tragedy struck again. Sid, Don's hero, died suddenly from an asthma attack, leaving an unfilled void. Desperate for an escape, for a place to belong, Don channeled his energy into performing. At Morgantown High School, he began to emerge from his shell, becoming class president. But underneath, the insecurity lingered and he felt poor, scrawny, an outsider. Yet, the stage called to him. At just 18, clutching his dreams and his wooden friend, Danny, Don Knotts headed for the glittering lights of New York City. The city, however, wasn't impressed. New York didn't roll out the red carpet for a shy, gangly kid with no connections. The doors slammed shut, one after another. Was this it? Was the dream? Born in fear and nurtured in imagination. Destined to die before it had even begun, crestfallen, but not entirely broken. He turned back. From fatigues to footlights, finding his voice in war. With his New York dreams dashed, Don Knotts returned home. But destiny, it seemed, wasn't done with him. The world was plunging into World War II, and soon, Don found himself enlisting in the United States Army. Ironically, it was here, amidst the global conflict, that he found his first real stage not with a rifle, but with laughter. He wasn't destined for the trenches. Instead, He was assigned to the 6th 817th Special Services Battalion, a unit whose mission was morale. From June 1943 to January 1946, Don's job was to make soldiers laugh, a task he embraced wholeheartedly. He traveled across the vast Pacific, performing in the Army's touring variety show, Stars and Gripes. He wasn't just a clown in uniform, though. By the time he was discharged, Technician Grade 5, Knotts was a decorated veteran, bearing the World War II Victory Medal, Philippine Liberation Medal, and the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal, among others. The Army, far from being just an escape, had forged him, giving him purpose, poise, and a stage presence honed before the toughest crowds. According to the biography website, he traveled to New York City to try and make his way as a comedian, but returned home to attend West Virginia University when his career failed to take off. After his freshman year, Knotts joined the U.S. Army, and during World War II, he toured the Pacific Islands as a comedian as part of a GI variety show called Stars and Gripes. He returned to West Virginia University, not as the shy boy who left, but as a seasoned performer, a veteran. He rejoined the Phi Sigma Kappa fraternity, further polishing his skills. But college offered more than an education this time. It offered love. He met Kay Metz, the refined daughter of a minister, seemingly his polar opposite. Yet, Dawn's charm, wit, and relentless humor won her over. She broke off her existing engagement, and soon they were married. With a degree, a wife, and a renewed sense of determination, Don set his sights once more on the Big Apple. This time, he wasn't alone, and he wasn't a wide-eyed kid. Would the unforgiving city finally open its arms to the man who now carried not just a dummy, but a uniform's worth of experience and a woman's love by his side? Then, he arrived in New York City armed with $100 to wife and hard-won confidence. But the city's heart remained cold. The initial auditions were just as brutal as before, too awkward, too nervous, too different. He pounded the pavement, hitting comedy clubs, landing a few radio spots, like Windy Wales on Bobby Benson and the B-Bar B-Riders, and even a regular gig on the soap opera, Search for Tomorrow. It wasn't a comedy, but it was a start. Then came 1956 and The Steve Allen Show. Here, Knotts found his niche, playing the twitchy, bug-eyed, nervous man in mock interviews. Audiences howled. Was this just a character? Or a glimpse of the man beneath the performance caught attention? But it was a stage play. No time for sergeants. That ignited the spark that would define his career. There, he met Andy Griffith.
I played two parts. I played a preacher who came out in the beginning and introduced Will Stockdale, who was Andy Griffith. And then, but the main part I played was when he was in the Army.
On the Broadway stage, their chemistry was undeniable. Knotts played two scene-stealing roles, a wide-eyed preacher and the bumbling Corporal Manuel Dexterity. When the play hit the big screen in 1958, Griffith took the lead. But Knotts, as a hilariously frazzled Air Force administrator, was unforgettable. It was the first tantalizing glimpse of the magic they could create together, a partnership destined to become one of television's greatest. The lights were finally finding Don Knotts. A phone call was coming, one that would offer him immortality in the fictional town of Mayberry. But immortality, as Don would learn, often comes at a steep, personal price. That fateful phone call came in 1960. Andy Griffith was helming a new show, and he saw its pilot. An idea sparked in Don Knotts' mind. He called Andy. "You're going to need a deputy," he joked, "and it should be me." Griffith agreed, connected him to production, and just like that, Deputy Barney Fife was born. It began almost as a joke, a half-serious suggestion that exploded into a cultural phenomenon. The Andy Griffith Show wasn't just a hit, it was a television landmark, and Barney Fife was its heart, albeit a comically nervous one. The chemistry between Knotts and Griffith was electric, a perfectly timed dance of straight man and buffoon that captivated America. Week after week, they brought the warmth and laughter of Mayberry into living rooms. The role catapulted Knotts to stardom, earning him an astonishing 5 Emmy Awards. He was America's favorite deputy, a national treasure.
I'm very happy and I'm really privileged to introduce the next number because it gives me an opportunity to say a couple of words about a couple of fellows I think a lot of. I've known Andy and Ernie a long time.
But beneath the surface of success, the cracks were showing. While Barney Fife flourished, Don Knotts struggled. The demanding 10-hour days took a toll. More damaging, perhaps, was the growing rift at home. His wife, Kay, reportedly never felt comfortable in the Hollywood circle, particularly with Andy's wife. The more famous Don became, the further he drifted from his own family. The pressure became unbearable. After 13 years and 2 children, the marriage crumbled. The divorce marked a turning point. Barney Fife might have been able to keep Mayberry in check, but Don Knotts couldn't save his own home. And the darkness he'd carried since childhood, the pervasive anxiety, was now beginning to claw its way back into the light, stronger and more insistent than ever. To be honest, the beloved nervous man wasn't just an act. It was a reflection, a distorted mirror image of Don Knotts' own inner turmoil. His fear was real, and it nearly consumed him. Long before the bright lights of Hollywood, back in the days of smaller live shows, the pre-performance anxiety was crippling. There were days he couldn't even get out of bed, paralyzed by a dread that went far beyond stage fright. This wasn't just butterflies. This was a deep-seated anxiety, a demon he'd wrestled with since childhood. Doctors intervened in the 1950s, prescribing medication to quell the storm within. But, like so many performers seeking solace, Knotts found himself ensnared in dependency, adding addiction to his list of private battles. Yet, his struggles ran deeper. He suffered from a debilitating hypochondria, convinced he was physically ill when he was, in fact, perfectly healthy. His mind had become a prison, tricking him into a state of perpetual sickness. How could a man so funny, so beloved, be living such a private hell while standing in the full glare of public adoration? He sought therapy, desperate for a cure, in one raw session, confronting the ghosts of his traumatic childhood. He even found himself cursing God. The fame, the wealth, the women, none of it could silence the echoes of the past. Sick, anxious, and plagued by insomnia, Knotts eventually reached a breaking point. In 1965, at the height of his Andy Griffith Show fame, he made a shocking decision. Believing the show would end after its 5th season, and with a 5-year movie contract from Universal Studios in hand, Don Knotts walked away. He left Mayberry, he left Barney Fife, and he left Andy Griffith. He stepped away from his iconic role, seeking a new path, a new dream. But was he truly running towards something new, or was he just running away from himself? Hi, Andy. Oh, hi, Barn. What's up? No problems. This won't take a minute. I just need an extra set of handcuff keys, just in case. I think I got a set here in my pocket. His Hollywood dreams and disappointments. He traded his deputy badge for a Universal Studios contract, hoping to conquer the silver screen. Freed from the constraints of Mayberry and his first marriage, Don Knotts embraced the Hollywood lifestyle. Off-screen, the bumbling deputy transformed into quite the ladies' man, a fact that surprised many but was well known among celebrities. He reveled in this new persona, perhaps a little too much. In 1969, he eagerly accepted the lead role in The Love God, a raunchy comedy designed to cast him as a desirable bachelor. It was a bold move, a chance to shed the Fife image entirely. But audiences weren't buying it. The film flopped. Hollywood, it seemed, wasn't ready to see Don Knotts as a Don Juan. It was a harsh lesson. He followed with other comedies like The Incredible Mr., Limpet, and The Reluctant Astronaut. While some found moderate success, none recaptured the magic of his television work. In 1970, he tried television again, hosting The Don Knotts Show, but it too was a disaster, competing poorly against established variety shows. Interestingly, when we released Mr. Whippet and Warner Brothers did, in the beginning, it was not a hit. I remember I went to New York to do PR for the picture, went to a restaurant, and the doorman said, "Hey, Mr. Knotts, welcome back to New York." Why did America's favorite funny man struggle to carry a project on his own? Perhaps the weight of expectation was too heavy. Or maybe the unique chemistry he shared with Andy Griffith was simply irreplaceable. He had to accept that his cinematic dreams wouldn't quite match his Mayberry triumphs. After years of playing the field, Don found love again with Loralee Chukna. It seemed like a chance for stability, a quiet harbor after years of professional and personal storms. But love couldn't protect him from the new darkness gathering on the horizon, a threat not to his career, but to his very perception of the world, aiming to steal the very sense that defined his expressive comedy. The final battles of Don. He had found a new love, but just as his personal life seemed to stabilize, a different, more insidious darkness began to creep in. It started subtly, blurred vision, difficulty reading, the unsettling struggle to recognize familiar faces. For an actor whose entire comedic arsenal relied on those wide, expressive eyes, the news felt like a death sentence. Doctors delivered the devastating diagnosis, macular degeneration. Don Knotts, the man whose eyes could signal panic, perplexity, and pure joy, was losing his sight. The diagnosis plunged him into a downward spiral. The fear of blindness, of losing the very tool of his trade, was overwhelming. His wife, Loralee Chukna, later described a desperate, almost frantic energy, a bucket list mentality born of despair. He became deeply depressed, and his frustration inevitably impacted those around him. The strain proved too much for their marriage. In 1983, after nearly 10 years, they divorced. Loralee pointed to his dramatic, perhaps self-pitying, response to the diagnosis as the final, insurmountable obstacle. It was another painful echo of his past, a reminder of how easily his inner demons could push love away. Yet, a glimmer of hope appeared. Knotts, now wealthy enough to afford the very best medical care, underwent eye surgery. In a remarkable turn, the procedure was a success, restoring his vision. He had, once again, stared down a terrifying abyss and stepped back. But the reprieve was cruelly short-lived. The shadows of his past held another, more lethal threat: decades of smoking, a habit long since abandoned but never forgotten by his body, presented their bill. In the early 2000s, doctors diagnosed him with lung cancer. True to form, Don tried to shield his family. He faced chemotherapy but kept the true gravity of his illness hidden, especially from his children. He wanted to maintain the facade of the funny man, to spare them the worry. He held on to hope, so much so that he embraced a new chapter. Years earlier, in 1987, on the set of a sitcom called What a Country, he'd met a young actress, Frances Yarborough. Their paths crossed again, and despite the significant age difference, they fell deeply in love, marrying in 2002. He had battled blindness and won. Could he defy the odds one last time? Or was this late-in-life marriage destined to be the final, bittersweet act in his extraordinary story? Karen's revelation and a friend's farewell. His body was failing. But the comedian within refused to surrender. In his final days, weakened by the relentless advance of cancer, Don Knotts held court from his hospital bed at UCLA Medical Center, delivering one last, poignant performance. His daughter, Karen Knotts, later shared a moment she had held close for years, a story that perfectly captured her father's unshakable essence. "He was making us laugh in hysterics," she recalled. "He was literally dying, but he did something, or said something, that caused my stepmother and me to go into fits of laughter." It was a bizarre, heartbreaking scene, a man at death's door, still finding the strength to land a punchline. But for Karen, the laughter felt wrong, overcome. She ran from the room, unable to bear laughing in the face of her father's mortality. "I thought to myself," she explained, "I don't want to be standing there in front of this man, my dearly beloved father, who's dying and laughing." The regret lingered until a conversation with director Howard Storm offered solace. "You should have stayed and laughed out loud," Storm told her. "That's what comedians live for." Karen knew he was right. Her father's humor wasn't a switch he could turn off. It was innate, an out-of-control natural funniness. As she put it, he would have wanted those laughs. It was his final gift. Another figure understood that profound connection: Andy Griffith. He journeyed to Don's bedside for one last farewell. Though Don couldn't speak, Andy sat with him, sharing memories, telling him he loved him. Then, in a moment of quiet intimacy, he used a name he rarely uttered, one Don himself disliked but held a special meaning between them. Breathe, keep breathing, Jess. In response, Don managed a slight movement of his shoulder. It was enough. Andy knew. "I'm afraid we did," he later told Larry King, acknowledging they both understood the end was near. The two quickly fell into their friendly routine of singing, laughing, and telling jokes. It was clear to those around them they had missed each other very much. Sadly, Knotts lost his battle with cancer on February 24th, 2006. He was 81. Don Knotts died on February 24th, 2006. The final curtain fell. The laughter ceased, but the story wasn't quite over. His legacy, and the shocking truth Karen had held onto for so long, was about to emerge. So, what was the shocking truth Karen Knotts held onto for so long? It wasn't some dark, hidden secret or a single explosive deathbed confession. The real shocking truth, in its most poignant form, was Don Knotts himself, a man profoundly complex, a delicate tapestry woven from threads of crippling anxiety and unparalleled comedic genius. His life was an extraordinary journey, a testament to the human spirit's capacity to find light in the darkness. He traveled from a childhood marred by poverty and fear in Morgantown, West Virginia, to the dazzling heights of Hollywood stardom, yet never fully escaped the shadows of his past. He was the wide-eyed, stammering Barney Fife, America's favorite bumbling deputy, a role that earned him 5 Emmys and a permanent place in television history. But he was also a veteran, a Broadway actor, a movie star, and a man engaged in a lifelong, often silent, war against his inner demons, anxiety, hypochondria, addiction, and self-doubt. The shocking truth lies in this very paradox. The man who brought immeasurable joy to millions wrestled daily with his own private pain. This is precisely where his enduring legacy resides. It's not just in the 5 Emmys gleaming on a shelf, nor solely in the unforgettable character of Barney Fife, though these are significant. Don Knotts' true inspiration lies in his remarkable resilience. It's found in his extraordinary ability to alchemize his deepest fears and anxieties into pure comedic gold, transforming personal struggle into universal laughter. He demonstrated this power even in his final hours, finding a way to make his loved ones laugh through their tears, the ultimate act for a comedian. Today, in Don Knotts' hometown of Morgantown, a statue stands tall, a bronze tribute to a comedic legend. But the truest monument to his life isn't made of metal. It lives in the laughter echoing across living rooms, the comfort of old reruns, and the warmth he brought to millions. Don Knotts taught us that even those who bring the most joy often carry unseen burdens. And yet, he turned pain into humor, proving that laughter can be both a gift and a form of healing. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow our channel for more untold stories behind the world's most unforgettable stars.